So DNF Duel is out, and I've been hyped for this game since the first beta. I played Striker and Vanguard during those betas, and I was interested to see what Enchantress would play like, but after playing around with the cast and doing a lot of trials, I actually settled on Lost Warrior for the time being. Not necessarily because I think he's strong, but I don't see many people playing him, and I think he's got a very interesting kit. This character is very weird. Even his Dustloop page classifies him as a gimmicky character, and while he isn't as strong as some of the top tiers, I don't think he's as bad as I originally thought. He's just very unconventional in a lot of ways, and I guess the best place to start would be with his movement. Overall, his basic movement options are kind of bad. His walk speed is fittingly slow for a man with no legs, jump arc feels standard or close to standard, and his forward dash feels average or slightly below. His backdash does cover a lot of ground. This is probably the best basic movement option he has, and keep in mind that backdashes are frame 1 airborne in this game, so even though they're not invincible, your opponent will have less options to convert off the hit if they do catch your backdash. However, you can still get punished very hard, and your opponent doesn't really have to try hard to look for it, so this is a tool to use sparingly. He also has an interesting air fireball that stops his momentum briefly. We'll touch on this later, but it's worth mentioning for his movement options. Now for his normals. He didn't get the best set of tools in this regard, but they are functional. 5A is a decent poke and his fastest normal, but it's horribly slow at 10 frames. If the opponent is in range, you're better off checking pressure with his throw, which is 5 frames faster. This normal does let you start strings to safely confirm combos, but the scaling is rough, and Lost Warrior is a very meter dependent character, so you don't want to cash out on these too often. His 5AA is a safe follow-up and facilitates his confirms. It's 0 on block if you end the string there, but this almost always leaves the opponent in range for 5B, although there is a spacing where 5B whiffs, so keep that in mind. There's also a spacing where 5AA whiffs after 5A, so you would have to go 5A into 5B at this range. 2A is just a slightly slower 5A that hits low. Notably, doesn't Gatling into 5A, but does go into pretty much everything else. 5B is slightly slower than 5A, but it has more range to compensate. It's a pretty safe move to just throw out and buffer 236 MS behind, because if it's blocked you get some chip damage and your plus, which is you throw out a 6S or just advance on the opponent. And if it hits, it combos, and I couldn't fault you for cashing out here. That's 40%, 3 time stacks, and the corner off of a lucky poke. 2B is awkward, it's very slow and causes a low juggle state, but you can only juggle with 5 MS if 2B starts the juggle. This can be risky to throw out and the reward is small, but it's a good combo and block string filler, but it mainly shines mid juggle, but we'll touch on that later. 5S is where a lot of the gimmicks come in. First off, this move is one reason you have to use the guard button against this character. I'm not sure if there's a range where this doesn't cross up, but at the very least, it crosses up most of the time. This attack is technically -8, but the recovery has an extremely wide cancel window offering a lot of options. Before we cover these options, there's one important detail. When canceling the recovery frames of this attack, for some reason, the game registers inputs as if Lost Warrior is still on the side of the screen from where the attack started, not where he ended up. Here, you can see where I input 4S, which when facing left, you would think gives me this. But it doesn't, it gives me this. I think this is because during the recovery of the move, Lost Warrior is still facing right, so all motions have to be input with that in mind. Despite him being on the right side of the screen, he's not yet facing left. So keep this in mind when attempting any of the following options after a blocked 5S. Also, keep in mind this attack doesn't go through projectiles. Next is 4S. This is just a slow short hop. It's useful in a variety of situations, mainly for keeping up pressure and mix-ups. Then there's 2S. The animation of this move pretty much tells you everything you need to know. It looks like a good anti-air, and it can perform that role, but you have to be very early because it has a whopping 20 frames of startup. Besides that, it just enables a lot of combos. 6S is one of his most degenerate tools. It's minus 18 on block, so you don't want to cancel into this at close range or at mid-range against long-reach characters like Hitman and Vanguard. But where this move shines is in screen control. Lost Warrior has 3 attacks that can side switch, which gives him a lot of positioning options, and this is arguably his strongest one since it opens up combos for the other routes. Jump A is pretty basic, but it does hit Crouching Crusader and Lost Warrior on the way up. Jump B is also slow, and the hitbox is awkward. It functions, but it's not stellar. His Jump S might look like ST Akuma's projectile, but I promise you it's not close. It has a lot of startup, so you have to commit to it early in your jump, but if you do it early enough, you'll have time to perform another action on the way down. You can hop around and be annoying with this move, and then use Jump B to punish step dodges and the like. Finally, onto specials. 236 MS is Mysterious Pierce. This is your all-purpose special move. Ending strings at long range, extending combos, ending combos, it does it all. It's also plus 9 on blocks, so you get to keep your turn if they block this. .623 MS is Absolute Guard, and this is easily his worst move because not only is it bad, but it also lies to you, as the guard point is not absolute. It doesn't work versus throws, loads, or projectiles. It does deal solid damage if you land it, but it's usually going to be a last resort option. 214 MS is Vanish Strike, and despite appearances, this is not an overhead. It tracks the opponent, and it's only -4 on block. This is similar to 236 MS in some ways, but it's less flexible and costs more mana. A very good move to get around zoning and just be annoying. Keep in mind that it isn't invincible, and your opponents can anti-air you. Jump MS is Dominate. This move deals great damage and it's easy to combo into. It causes a hard knockdown that you can easily follow up with an OTG. And now for his most important move. 5 MS is Vanish Cutter. This attack crosses up similar to 5S, but it's much more punishable at -22. You don't want to throw this out much, but you do want to use it in combos every chance you get because the recovery is jump cancelable, and this is the crux of optimizing your combos with Lost Warrior. There are simple optimizations like this, but the real optimization is canceling your pre-jump frames into your other specials. This is where Lost Warrior gets access to his best damage. For Mysterious Pierce or Vanish Strike, you want to wait until this point to start your motion, and carry that motion into up or 8 MS. Holding up while pressing MS will guarantee you get your desired special. If you let go of up before you hit MS, you could get a 5 MS. 5 MS into 5 MS does work. But notice how my up input and my second MS input are separated now. That's because you cannot get this cancel while holding up. I've tried this with turbo enabled and through raw trial and error, and this cancel never works unless I let go of up before I hit MS. Note that this cancel is arguably the best one because it's the most meter efficient and often the more damaging. I've seen some concerns that this technique is hitbox or stick only, but here I am doing it on pad. I'm not a pad player, and just to be thorough, I included myself doing it on hitbox and on stick as well, and I actually do prefer playing this character on stick. Now I want to cover some general tips for playing Lost Warrior. The main thing you're going to be battling is his reliance on meter. You want to avoid exhaustion as much as possible unless the reward is there, whether that be damage or time stacks. And using full motions is a must. This character needs all the meter he can get, and a ton of his combos don't even work unless you use full motions. The second part is managing time stacks. You get time stacks every time you land a special move, and when you get the fifth one, time stops and you get to extend your combo. How you get stacks 1 through 4 doesn't matter as much as when you get the fifth. You don't want to get your fifth stack when the opponent is airborne. This makes 5MS your best option since it OTGs and applies the stack immediately. You want them grounded so you can get as many attacks as possible. It's worth noting that time stop does last longer during awakening, so consider that in your decision making. It's very unlikely you'll get 2 time stops in one round, as your opponent will likely die before you get the second. Speaking of awakening, Lost Warrior probably has the easiest decision tree for using his awakening skill. If you haven't stopped time yet, don't use your awakening skill. If you have, use it whenever you want. His awakening passive is pretty much worthless after a time stop, so the awakening skill is just free real estate at that point. This one goes for every character, but knowing your optimal routes is important. In this game, however, optimal is more subjective because it's not just damage and screen position. You have to manage your meter effectively from round start, whereas most fighting games, you don't consider that aspect until you've actually built some meter. It might not do you much good to fight into an advantageous position if you have to fight through exhaustion afterwards. I wanted to add a combo section for this video, but it's really dragged on long enough already. But there's no shortage of combos on YouTube and Twitter. Just be critical of the meter to damage ratio, but honestly, this character usually hurts when he spends meter anyway. As for fighting against Lost Warrior, I don't have any magic pill solutions, but there are a few things I can talk about. The main thing is don't trust his position on the screen. He has so many ways to close distance or just track you outright. If you think you're going to be safe just because he's far away, you're just setting yourself up for salt and disappointment. Watch out for 6S and 214MS and just bully him when you get in. His defense is terrible, and even if he guard cancels, which I forgot to mention, his guard cancel is one of the better ones, he still really hates parting with the meter because returning to neutral with no meter isn't really a great situation for him. But honestly, if you've watched the entire video, you can deduce where the opportunities for Lost Warrior to ruin your day are. For example, if you thought you were safe to press on his 5S because the frame data says it's -8. Honestly, I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I think I've covered everything I originally wanted to. I'm having a blast with this game and this character, but by the time this video goes up, I could be a Ranger main for all I know. I hope this helped you learn to use Lost Warrior or defend yourself against him. Thanks for watching.